Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. I'm Jim Cardle. Well, the 2015 legislative session has finally adjourned after 140 days, and legislators like House Chairman of Natural Resources Jim Keffer, himself a small businessman, have gone back home to be citizen legislators, as we're so fond of saying here in Texas. Chairman Keffer has been one of the leaders and more experienced legislators involved in tax reform this session, business and water issues, as well as a key leader in the Alliance to Life and Right to Life issues. What were the successes this session, and where does Chairman Keffer see that things were accomplished during 2015? We're pleased to be able to visit with Chairman Jim Keffer, a conservative from HD 60 in Eastland, Texas. Chairman Keffer, appreciate you taking time to come in and visit with today. Welcome to Texas Insider TV.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. Always with you, Jimbo.
As I mentioned in the intro, you have been intimately involved in virtually all of the major accomplishments this session, certainly some more than others. We'll get into those. But let's talk, if we can, first, in respect for your time to keep you going today. Let's talk from maybe a 30,000-foot perspective. You're fresh off a sine die yesterday. The last weeks are always intense negotiations going back and forth with the House and Senate. How do you feel overall? Was it a successful session? Do you and your peers feel like you got enough accomplished, and how successful do you feel this session was?
I'm very pleased with the session. Number one, we're not having a special, so I think that's good. We got our work done in 140 days, which we're supposed to do.
Yes.
And I kept on saying throughout the session, if we could keep the adults in the room, that we could get in and get out, get some major things done, and I think we did that. And I'm very proud of the way the legislature worked under Governor Abbott.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody should be very proud of what we did. Everybody had dire predictions between the Senate and the House. I mean, there's always friction between the Senate and the House. I mean, that goes back forever. It's the way things are. And and I remind people that the system here is built to kill bills, not pass bills. So I think overall, the leadership worked very well together. Everybody understood we needed what was important, and we got the job done.
You're spot on there, the conservative perspective here, and the frustration of giving you folks pressure to do things fast, but traditionally government being a slow-moving objective is a conservative perspective, so appreciate your help there. Let's drill down into some of the issues. You were chairman of the Natural Resources, helped some of the water plans. You've been a past chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, which had a key role this session, not to mention the Alliance for Life and ProLife Issues. Talk first, if you can, Mr. Chairman, about perhaps the budget and the tax reform. A huge amount of news here in the last week or two of the session, but you came through, I think, with more perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, from the House side on the budget, and particularly the franchise and margins tax cut. How do you see the tax cuts playing out for this session?
Well, I think very well. We were having discussions or debates among the Senate and the House on tax cuts, which I think is a great even conversation to have. I mean, if we're going to have a debate on things, on tax cuts instead of tax increases, I think we were way ahead of the game on that, and we were able to add to the homestead exemption, and I think that's great. And the margin tax is being cut 25% across the board, and so I think to its extinction, in the future. So I think we won again the best place to set up business in the country. Texas is again number one, and I think with the tax cuts that we were able to do, I think that just reinforces our position in this country, job creation and a beacon out there where people want to move, bring their businesses, and see opportunity. So I'm very proud to do that. We kept the budget under the spending cap, constitutional spending cap, again.
We have pointed out that you all, much to the surprise of some, analyst initially. The House came out with a lower spending figure than the Senate initially.
Yeah, I know. And, you know, the critics out there will criticize, but I just feel, I hope people will read and that they will see what the truth is, what the facts are, and that they will see that I think they can be very proud of the legislature and how we did our business.
How about, in particular, one of the things that I think may have not drawn enough attention, but part of, you mentioned the franchise and margins tax being cut 25%. Another key feature, though, on the homestead exemption was the requirement for local taxing bodies, which is where the majority of the taxing power lies. You all implemented something where 60% of the local taxing board, a supermajority, so to speak, has to vote for these issues, so folks will know at the local level.
Well,
Talk
yeah.
about the transparency.
Well, yeah, and I think it is transparency because we get blamed all the time for property taxes. And we've had, since I've been in the legislature, 2 major property tax cuts. But unfortunately, we don't control the local government. We don't control the local issues that go on. So a lot of times, people never see those tax cuts, property tax cuts, because they are almost immediately overridden on local issues. And I'm not saying that's bad, good, or indifferent. I'm just saying that's a fact of life. So it's something that I think people need to understand, and I think that's one more little tool in the toolbox that taxpayers can have and use and see that they're being we are trying to protect them from the taxes that they pay.
Folks, I want to thank you again for joining us for this edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers and Alex Mills. Mr. Chairman, if I can, let's pivot and talk about another issue you've been a key leader and involved in both in the 2011, 2013, now 2015 session. You had a press conference with all the pro-life, Alliance for Life groups in mid-March that was a bit of a turning point, and have been a leader in this whole effort. If you believe what the opposition and the pro-choice folks say, Texas has been nothing but going backwards in their perspective, forward in the right to life argument and analysis. How about, if I can, you are one who's dodged the spotlight on that, frankly. You've refused to take credit, and that is to your credit, but talk about what's kept you involved, or what has been your moving factor in some of these pro-life issues, and how did it play out this session?
Well, obviously my belief that pro-life is an important issue, and it's our foundation of our civilization, really. And you know, we had a press conference to try to highlight those pro-life bills that were coming forward through the process, and I think I think we were able to be successful on that. The judicial bypass, we strengthened parental rights in that regard.
Huge initiative this session.
And yeah, Jeannie Morrison had that bill and did extremely well with it. We had you know, Down syndrome. Unfortunately, there is issues there that had to be addressed as far as aborting those. Well, it's just it's an issue that we just felt like had to be reinforced on pro-life rights for protection for Down syndrome. Finally, end of life. We could get all the groups together. And I think Mr. Springer, Drew Springer, was the author of that bill, where finally we could get all the groups together for end-of-life effort. So I think overall, again, we had a very good pro-life session, but I just want to tell people that Texas by themselves cannot end abortion. Texas by itself cannot do away with Roe versus Wade. The facts of life are states, and I think Texas in a leadership position is bumping now Roe versus Wade. And that's something that we can still work around the edges and we can still do what we can, but until we elect a president that will take that issue on and have the backbone to do that, and with his or her support, appoint Supreme Court justices that will overturn Roe versus Wade, we're going to have, unfortunately, abortion in this country. So we have to look at the big picture too, the overall picture, and not get caught up in issues where the state doesn't have the power that the federal government does. So I'm hopeful not that that's a good thing. I mean, we've got to continue to elect people that are pro-life, and I believe that, to get away from that scourge eventually. But it is something I think that people have to know where those lines are and not expect more than their state legislator can provide. And the result there, because again, it's a federal issue, it's Roe versus Wade, and we have to overturn that law.
And it's no small chore, so to speak, to get some of those right to life groups together. Congratulations on that in and of itself. Let me go to another issue. As chairman of the Natural Resources, you've been a previous chairman of Energy Resources, but water and transportation are the two final issues. In particular here, first, water. Natural resources are immensely important to the state. We're all blessed with the recent rains, but in particular for your district and a lot of West Texas is state water plan and long-range planning to manage our scarce, sometimes, resources. Tell us what you can.
Well, I'm proud to say that under my chairmanship, it's rained more in Texas than ever before. Matter of fact, I think the month of May was the most rain ever recorded since we've been doing that. So here in Texas, so I'm proud of that. Yes, I am. But seriously, I think what we did in the committee this session, which I'm very proud of, and I'm very proud of the committee that I had, very professional, very focused, very seriously engaged in our future with water. All of them, I'm proud to say. But we want people in Texas and the technology. We need to find new sources of water, and we need to look at better ways of conserving our water. Whether it's desal, whether it's Lyle Larson's underground storage. I mean, it's aquifer underground storage. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's things like that, because when you look at our surface water, our surface lakes, to build a hole and hope it rains, I mean, that's been our problem. And we're not out of this, even though we've had this immense rain. Climatologists tell us that we are still in a drought. We're having a reprieve here, but the drought is still with us. And so everything we can do, and in our above ground water, our lakes, our biggest enemy is evaporation. So if we can store more water underground, find ways of doing that, there we bump up against a Clean Water Act, a federal Clean Water Act. We've got to work with our federal partners to help us be able to do that. But I think, and it's desal and it's brackish water and it's all the above, to make sure that we have the water resources for our continual growth. And, there's nothing else more vital, obviously. And so we've got to have that consistent source. And I think Texas is blessed, as always, but it's certainly blessed with our location and what we have to offer. So we just have to get the technology in line and get it together where we have that consistent resource for the future.
Well, speaking of not necessarily natural resources, but the resources necessary to manage Texas's exponential growth, I think even close to 1.8 or upwards of 2 million people since your last legislative session 2-3 years ago, is traffic and congestion and transportation funding. Believe you all passed and started the initiative in the House this session whereby state funding for transportation is going to go up about 50% by 2020. Talk about, and a key part of that is not necessarily the toll roads, but the additional funding that's going to help manage the growth. Talk about the efforts to fund transportation,
I
and where
don't-
you all see that.
I don't care where you are. Transportation is an issue. We got to put up another light in Eastland. I mean, it's really, it's bad everywhere. But
That's your hometown out in West Texas.
But it's the famous Abbott commercial when he was running of him in the wheelchair and he was going faster than people stuck in traffic. I mean, it's a issue. It will continue to be an issue for Texas because of our growth. But I think this session, and being able to end diversions that we started several sessions ago, but those diversions, we're beginning to see some fruits of our labor. And diversions going back to transportation, getting those diversions on a standalone, out of transportation, taking money away from where it's supposed to be going.
Huge Tea Party grassroots conservative issue that you all got done.
Oh yeah, and it's not this session. We started it 2 sessions ago.
Okay.
So it continues. So and taking money out of the rainy day fund, diverting money there, taxpayer dollars that are being held in that fund. We're going to be using that not only for water as we did 2 sessions ago, but now for transportation. This session, I can't think of a better way to use taxpayer dollars than the infrastructure. So I think Texas again is blessed. We're going to end up with $11 billion in that source, in that rainy day fund. So again, I think we are looking towards the future. We are trying to be as conservative as we can be, but also moving our state forward, because you can choke it. You can choke our progress, but there's that fine balance of keeping money for the future, but also having a vision for what the state needs to look like down the road, and spending our money wisely when we do spend it. So I think we're on that road. I thank and congratulate the leadership, Abbott, Lieutenant Governor, Speaker, and all those that work very hard on this on these issues this session, because I think we have made tremendous stride and good progress in all those efforts.
Well, speaking of choking and looking on down the road, we're going to let you, Chairman Keffer of Natural Resources, get out back to Eastland and onto your family. We appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me. Always good to be here.
Folks, we appreciate you tuning in for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. We're glad to visit today with one of the conservative leaders in the Texas House, Chairman Jim Keffer from House District 60 with the Natural Resources Committee. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not. I'm Jim Cardle. Thanks for joining us.